Hi, I'm Mattioli, and welcome to another reading of Boston Accent. It's Valentine's Day, so we're wearing red. See, got red on. This is the closest thing I got to red, other than a pair of Red Sox, and I'm not showing you those. So happy Valentine's Day. Kiss, kiss. Oh. All right, Boston Accent contains mature subject matter, and it's available on Amazon.com. Let's pick up where we left off yesterday. After Kevin tells me of his first week in California behind bars, he tells me he has a surprise and pulls out 2 hits of mescaline. We wash it down with piss one beer, we're drinking, and he asks me where we're going. Having been in California for 4 days, I am far from being prepared to hand in my resume for a job with the Chamber of Commerce. I do know one place and it's pretty cool, I tell Kevin. And I give him directions to Ole Sacramento. By the time we arrive in Old Sac and find a place to park, we are peaking on the mescaline. Peaking. We head over to the boardwalk and enter an Old West themed club and grab seats at the bar. After a couple of beers, this woman, who has obviously had too much to drink, sits down next to me. She tries ordering a drink, but the bartender tells her she's had enough. She turns and looks me in the eye and asks me to buy her a drink, and I tell her the bartender won't serve her. Now, I'm tripping on mescaline, but I swear this woman is a transsexual. Someone has done a really good job, but I can tell. Kevin is really fucked up on the booze as well as the mescaline, and he comes over and starts hanging on the questionable woman. He tries to buy her a drink, and the bartender shuts him off as well. Now Kevin wants to leave because he can't get a drink, and he wants to hit a liquor store. He also wants to take his new friend with us. I know, he wants a lot. Kevin usually does want a lot. How does it feel to want? Okay, happy Valentine's Day. I pull him away and tell him she's a he. He tells me I'm wrong, that I'm just messed up on the mescaline, and he invites she to leave with us. I tell him I'm not having anything to do with this, and he says, fine. I'll keep her to myself. Knock yourself out. Kevin tells his new friend we're leaving, and then he has to pull her off her bar stool because she is not responding. When she does stand up, she almost falls to the floor. And Kevin is trying to hold him up and asking me for help. The two of us walk she out of the bar, and it feels like the whole place is watching us, and I don't like this at all. We get out on the boardwalk and are headed to the car when she collapses on the walkway. We roll him over on his back, and she is out cold. Are you still with me on this? I hope you didn't tune in the middle of this because you're gonna be like, what? Okay. Where the hell was I? Kevin and I look at each other, and I say, leave her. Kevin says, fuck it. We walk away, leaving our mystery guest lying in the middle of the boardwalk. As we leave the boardwalk and are almost to the car, we look back, and there's a group of people gathered around Kevin's friend. I yell, she's a he! And Kevin looks at me, shakes his head, and says, you're wrong. She was hot. I tell him, I just did you a favor, and you haven't got a clue. We get in the car, and I ask Kevin what he wants to do now, and he wants to know if there's a part of town where we can get hookers. I tell him Phil gave me that information my first day here when we drove through the hooker area after leaving the bus station. We get back on the highway, and I'm looking for the downtown exit when blue lights come on behind us, and the cops pull us over. The cops tell Kevin he was all over the road and ask him how much he's had to drink. Kevin tells him a couple of beers, and the cop asks me if I've been drinking. I tell him I had one beer with dinner. We're both still on mescaline, and this crazy trip we're on is not getting any better. The cop tells us both to get out of the car. We figure, this is it. We're getting locked up for the night. At the same time, I'm thinking, I hope that transsexual isn't in my cell. Then we get the surprise of all surprises when the cop hands me the keys and says, you drive. I was like, yes, sir, no problem. And Kevin was like, you must be shitting me. We both get back in the car, and I pull away from the cop, continuing to head towards the downtown exit. I'm getting into driving on the mescaline, and I say out loud, this is my first time driving in California. This is great. I look at Kevin, and he's not smiling. He says, pull the fucking car over. I'm like, what are you talking about? The cop told me to drive. Pull over. I don't give a fuck. You're not driving. So I pull over and tell him, if we run into the cop again, you're going to jail. Kevin is out of the car and headed to the driver's side. I know, as stubborn as he is, that I won't win this argument, so I just get out. Kevin is right back behind the wheel and says, where's the exit for the hookers? I tell him, just drive, although I'll know it when I see it. I spot the exit, and we drive into the downtown area where all the streets are named for the alphabet, and we want T Street. We find T Street, and no sooner do we enter it than we see women standing on the corners wearing very little clothing. Kevin smiles for the first time since his new she girlfriend passed out on the boardwalk, and he pulls the car over. Right away, a black girl comes up to his window and asks if he's a cop, and what does he want? Kevin says, I'm not a cop. How much for a blowjob? The hooker tells him $30, and Kevin says, where do we do it? The hooker points to a building and says, in there. Kevin asks me if I want anything, and I tell him I'm all set. Then I tell him to just take the $30 and leave his wallet with me. While he's fishing his wallet out, the hooker walks quickly away. A cruiser pulls up alongside us, and a cop says, are you lost? Kevin looks at the cop, expecting to see the cop that just let us go, and is thrilled to see it's a different cop. Kevin says, we're all set. We're leaving. And he puts it in drive, and we leave T Street, heading towards my neighborhood. This just isn't our night, I tell Kevin, and he says, no shit. Let's get some beer. And we start looking for a package store. We find a store, and there is this really hot-looking girl hanging outside, but she looks really upset. I start talking to her and ask, are you okay? Do you need a ride? She looks at us real suspicious and says, are you guys okay? You're not going to hurt me. And I tell her, we just want to party. We start driving around drinking, looking for a place to park, and Kevin pulls into this sub-shop parking lot and parks away from everyone in the corner. The girl is in the back seat by herself, and I get out and get in the back with her. Kevin thinks he's going to miss out on something, so he jumps in the back seat on the other side of our guest. We're all talking, and Kevin and I are being very aggressive and patting her on the legs while we talk, and the girl is getting really tense, and she suddenly yells, I'm not going to suck your dicks. Kevin and I back away. We're staring at her, not saying anything, and she says, these three fucking Mexicans pushed me in their car, held a sawed-off shotgun to my head, and made me suck their dicks. I'm not sucking your dicks. Kevin and I look at each other and say, okay. Then we get out of the back seat, get back in the front seat, and I ask her, so, is there someplace we can drop you off? Okay, we've got like 5 more minutes. Let's see if we can get a little bit farther. I think we can read another segment. Okay, here we go. Kevin went back to Oakland to continue with his new job, and I hit the pavement looking for any job in a television station. All the stations told me the same thing. I needed 2 more years of college. I had no intention of going back to school. I wanted to work. The holidays arrived, and I was still unemployed after 2 months in California. I was miserable, broke, and I needed a break. Inez and Phil had gotten over my dinner date with Inez, but I was still unhappy living with them and living in Sacramento in general. I did not fit in here, and I began to second-guess my leaving Massachusetts. I contemplated joining the service so I could be employed and leave Sacramento. Phil turned me on to a plasma center downtown where you would pay $10 for the plasma removed from 2 pints of blood. You could give every 2 weeks, and I would stretch the shit out of those $10 so I could eat. Once in a while, Phil or Inez would share a little food with me, but I couldn't count on it. I was losing weight quickly, and I didn't have much to spare. I ended up applying for food stamps, but I had to wait 6 weeks for that to kick in. I also went to an Episcopal church, which is the faith I was brought up in, and they gave me a bag of canned goods. I never thought I would end up like this, but at least I had a roof over my head. One day at the plasma center, I was in the middle of the blood-out portion of our program when the needle worked its way out of my arm, and my blood started running out all over the floor. I was in a huge room with maybe 30 beds, only 3 nurses, and none of the nurses saw my problem. I began to try to get their attention in a normal speaking voice. Help, please help, and that wasn't working. Suddenly, the woman in the bed next to me starts screaming, and 2 of the 3 nurses run to my aid. They seemed sincerely concerned for my welfare and pumped the remaining blood back into me without separating the plasma and told me I would still get my full $10. I never went back after that. I got lucky and landed a job as a dishwasher in an Italian restaurant where I got 1 meal a day off the menu of anything I wanted. I felt absolutely no shame washing dishes and prepping veggies. I was so happy to be getting the 1 meal a day and to have some sort of income. I asked for as many hours as I could get, and when the only other dishwasher got fired for drinking the unfinished carafes of wine, I went to 7 days a week. I was determined to make it work out here and not go back with my tail between my legs. As it turned out, 1 month after I was gone out of my parents' house, they threw out my awesome early 1960s stereo console, put my bed and dresser in storage in the basement, and turned my room into a den. I'm surprised they waited a whole month. Ralph was probably taking my bed apart before I was out of the driveway. Now that I was working, Inez started making comments about me moving out. Sure, I was working, but I hardly had the money necessary to get an apartment. Inez started asking Phil to pressure me to find an apartment, and I started looking for roommates wanted, but I still didn't have first and last month's rent. New Year's Eve arrived, and Phil and I bought a bottle of tequila and walked down the railroad tracks across the street from the house singing the Boston anthem, Dirty Water, by the Standells. I think we were both feeling a little homesick. Okay, we don't have time to start the next segment, which I believe is the last segment before we start a new chapter. Oh, it is! It's getting so exciting! Oh. Okay, that's it for today. I'm Mark Mattioli, and we're reading Boston Accent, available on Amazon.com. God willing, we'll do this again tomorrow. Happy Valentine's Day. Big smooch. Big wet one. A lot of tongue. Ciao, baby.